Actually, would like to welcome also our third speaker, Dr. Michael Burcham, and his talk is about entrepreneurial collaboration, transforming ideas and intellectual property into businesses within the university. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Burcham.
So good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be back for a second year. I am a bit more controversial than many of your speakers because I am first an entrepreneur and secondly a faculty member at Vanderbilt. And please keep that in mind as you hear me speak. For those of you who are part of KFUPM, do something for me. Look around this room and tell me what part of your ecosystem is here for entrepreneurship and what part is missing. Just take a second and look around. And notice who's not here just as much as you notice who's here. Because I would submit to you as for much of the rhetoric as you can possibly muster out, until you choose to have one, no pretty charts will give you one. An ecosystem is built by the people who choose to work together. Not buildings, not colleges, not departments. It's people. And when you as people decide you want an ecosystem, you will have one. But until you decide that, you will not. Now with that, let's get started. Let me tell you a little bit about our campus in Nashville, and then I'll tell you a little bit about some of my thoughts. Our campus sits on 330 acres, about 1.34 million square meters. We have enough buildings to fill 1.69 million square meters, and this past year we received over $600 million US in external funding. So we have a lot of things in our tech transfer museum that need to be commercialized. Our city ranks first in the United States for the past 2 years in job growth. Not necessarily the most jobs created, but the fastest growing, one of the very fastest growing economies. And our industries are 3 key industries: healthcare, digital media, and technology. Now, we compare to you in one very interesting way. Given I've been here now 2 years and had the chance to visit around, it seems to me that the enormous lion's share of everything to do with energy for your country is here. You can almost touch it all. Almost everything in my country that has to do with healthcare is in my city. Now, there are a lot of other wonderful research facilities and other things, but when you look at the dollars that are spent in America in healthcare and where they flow, we have almost 100 billion of those flowing through our city by itself. If you look at the dollars that flow through our banks in healthcare, it's almost 500 billion. So we have lots of activity going on in that particular industry. We're concentrated in healthcare, much as you're concentrated in energy. Engineers and scientists on our campus and yours need entrepreneurial skills to be successful at all levels in the organization, particularly those who might be your students when they leave. One of the questions you should ask yourself about your entrepreneurial ecosystem that you're talking about is what happens when your student becomes an alumni? Do they remain part of your system? How many of them are here today representing that part of your ecosystem? Because I would submit to you they're one of the most valuable assets you have for your ecosystem if they become part of your discussion and what you're doing. Our area of entrepreneurial studies really focuses on accelerating technology entrepreneurship and education through collaboration. We don't even begin to kid ourselves that on our campus, with all the assets we actually have a full ecosystem. We look more like Swiss cheese. We have lots of holes. And so we have purposefully, for the last decade, built enormous business partnerships all over the world to try to fill the holes so that we have something close to an ecosystem. Because there is no way on our campus we have determined we will ever have everything we ever needed to have an ecosystem. We are a part of a bigger ecosystem. We believe in immersion learning for entrepreneurship. If you want to learn entrepreneurial skills, you have to do them, not just read about them and get tested on them. We prepare our students for leadership positions, whether they be a chemist or a physician or a medical researcher or an engineer. We want them to be leaders of the organizations where they go. And we partner with leading corporations around the world to help make that happen. I've divided today's comments to you in 3 parts. I want to give you an insight of this afternoon and tomorrow morning. Wael asked me today to share with you one example of our small piece of the ecosystem in Nashville through a class that I do, and I will share that with you. Tomorrow, if you will indulge me and be here bright and early in the morning, I'm going to take one piece of intellectual property that came through our program last year that is now commercialized and what we're doing with it. And you'll get to see how it has touched every piece of the ecosystem to do what it's doing. But let's take a look first at the ecosystem. Here's the dysfunction I observe, and I've consulted with about 25 entities, mostly cities and communities looking to build their ecosystem. They have lots of the pieces of the puzzle. They rarely fit together. And all those little puzzle pieces get as close as they can, but they rarely look like a picture. And it's not uncommon, because in virtually all organizations, only about 1/3 of people think their current organization is actually innovative at all. They think it's a lot of things missing. They just seem to lack the power to do anything about it, as they view it. For purposes of my view of what is an ecosystem, let's think about it. It's actually the fertile soil that allows the plant, which we will call a new concept or venture, to get launched. And there are a number of enablers. Now, every one of these enablers are equally good at killing a good idea. And actually, they're better at killing a good idea than they are supporting it. You will observe it quite quickly the minute you open your own incubator, how quickly many folks on this campus seem to be better at shooting arrows at ideas than they are at supporting and nurturing them and helping them grow. But from venture creators, the entrepreneurs, to the mentors, advisors, the university faculty and researchers and students, the different support organizations of legal and accounting, the labor markets, the investors, the government, and don't forget large businesses, all of these make the ecosystem. And unless you have them all under a roof, you must partner with organizations so that you have them in their entirety. In order to build a great ecosystem, I usually begin by asking you, have you actually taken an inventory of your assets, of what you actually have on campus, what's in the DTV next door, what's actually in the city in which you reside, and what happens in the greater region for entrepreneurship. What are the assets and the key ingredients here for success? The second is, what is your strategy? Is it more patent production for the simple sake of listing numbers of patents you hold? Or is it in commercializing them so they turn into wealth? How will you choose to develop the mindset? And how will you create experiential learning for everyone involved? How do you choose to involve stakeholders? It's very easy to see how many of your stakeholders are engaged, because you can look around and see, do they show up? Whether you're doing a class or an event, or having an alumni come speak, as you had 2 awesome alumni here in this room last night. There were about 30 of us here to hear them. They flew all the way from Jeddah to tell a story, a fantastic story of what they had done. And on a campus of 12,000 people, 30 found their way here. Priority planning is equally important. To understand of all the many things you can do, what are the order in which you will build the infrastructure? If I were to try to talk to you about building a building on this campus, we would first talk about the land and how to prepare it in order that a foundation might actually support whatever we were going to build. Priority planning must begin with infrastructure planning for entrepreneurship long before you're pitching your ideas to investors. The launch and execution, so you do things right and do the right things, is important. The best-in-class programming that you have and where you might partner, if that is not here. And then finally, how you will choose to celebrate success. These 7 domains of an assessment really give you insight to what you actually have and what you might desire to build. I call the best ingredient for success FOMO, fear of missing out. I find the minute all the right people show up, most everybody else will show up too, for fear of missing out. You have colleagues who couldn't resist hearing the rector's speech. That's called FOMO. Okay? It's a fantastically strong quality that causes people to want to be part of something. Google last year announced a partnership with our center, one of 7 in the United States. I had almost 30 corporations show up within the next 2 weeks to talk about being my partner. It's funny, I had been there for almost 5 years, and for many of them, I had made numerous calls that had not been returned. But the minute Google decided I was their best partner in the region, I was suddenly their best friend. That's called FOMO. Build a little FOMO in your plan. It works beautifully. The innovation sequence really says you have to screen a lot of ideas. I was very struck by our first speaker this morning. Of 800 and something different ideas, 20 had become businesses. There's some very important work for you that do research here or teach, particularly in the business and engineering programs, to understand why that is. Why only 20 of 800? How are they not prepared? Because honestly, if all 800 ideas had been fantastic, and Aramco chose not to invest in them, we would have in my center, or they could have found it in Silicon Valley. There's lots of places to get capital. So the question you should be asking yourself is, were only 20 worthy because the rest were completely unprepared? Or was there only enough capital to do 20 and we need more capital? And that's a good provocative question for later today for you. We've screened about 2,500 concepts. We believe in community-based screening, so we are screenings from everyone, even beyond students. Now, one of the beauties of doing that is I get to link business leaders with students. They form teams together, which makes a much more powerful, cohesive team. And of the 104 teams we have incubated, we have funded 67 of them. So over half. And they have collectively raised in their first round of capital almost $80 million to do that. But it's because our approach is very much one of teaching and nurturing, not one of come back when you're ready. Because many people don't know when they're ready, and they need the coaching of what they need next. See, the simple truth is that new ideas need access. They need access to knowledge on how to build a business model. You'd be surprised how many people think a business model is simply nothing more than how this business will flow and who might be a customer. That's calling a language nothing more than the letters of an alphabet. Business models are much more sophisticated than simply its parts. The expertise and introductions are the most valuable asset your entrepreneur alumni have. How do you leverage the introductions and the connections and the Rolodex of your entrepreneurs to help your student teams? The early stage capital is extremely important to this process, and a supportive community, whether that's simply a community within KFUPM or a larger community that includes the DTV and Aramco, or an even larger one that includes the Eastern Province. All of those are good community questions to consider. So let's look at a smaller scale at a university-based ecosystem. And there are a few building blocks. These will look slightly familiar to you because they do really follow a process. The first is something many of us have in our universities, this idea of research and discovery. Then we file all the intellectual property documents to make sure it's all protected. And when we started this journey at Vanderbilt almost a decade ago, I wasn't kidding when I told you our tech transfer office resembled much more of a museum than a place for innovation. We had lots of things with tags hanging on the shelf. Most of our students had no idea what was in the vault. Much of what was in the vault was from faculty who had long come and gone. If you asked the faculty, they filled out the papers and turned it in, and their job was done, and they went back to the classroom and the research lab, and the stuff just sat there to mold, waiting for someone to swoop in and decide, oh, I'll patent this or that. Perhaps yours is better organized than ours was, but that's what it felt like at the time. So we had to do something about it. So we started working on this way to build ideas around the technology that had been patented. It was quite often what is patented and where the business opportunity is about 10 degrees apart. Not that far, but just far enough that a literal interpretation of the patent won't produce a business. But just a little bit of work to the side, 5 or 10 degrees away, is a business. You can miss it very easily, because if you start 10 degrees off and you spend 3 and 4 years, you end up very far away in a vector. But if you realize in the beginning you're 10 degrees off, you can find the business. Then we develop courses that explore the options, and I'll show you one of those courses here in a moment. From there, ways out of those courses, students could build true business models that investors would find interesting. To get seed funding that they needed, because the capital, I heard one of your colleagues share with me at a break today, the capital and cash of a young business is like the blood in our bodies. Without it, we don't survive. Business incubation follows early capital so that we can get it organized and really test with our first customers and our early adopters. Do they love it as much as we thought they would and they thought they would? Or does it need modification before we can actually launch a legitimate business that will grow really well? Now, taking this concept, I'd like to share with you one final thought before I launch into showing you about the class, and it comes up now. A vibrant university ecosystem is always part of a larger ecosystem, in my opinion. It's very hard under one roof to have all the parts you need to create a legitimate high-growth business that is something you want to brag about. You'll find many interesting small things you can do, but it's really hard to have everything under one. It takes a massive undertaking and a massive amount of capital to do that. So our focus on collaboration has extended beyond the campus. I was glad to hear you mention high schools. We are very much involved in youth engagement. We absolutely believe that the mindset begins very early on. And without that right mindset, it's very hard to return it. I honestly, personally feel that we are our most creative and entrepreneurial when we're actually quite young. And it gets beat out of us, particularly in high school by our peers. And if it's not beat out of us then, by the time we get to college, it's significantly beat out of us. So that the time we finish, has no one really helped us nurture our creative thinking. By the time we leave college, we've forgotten what creativity was all about. At the university, we focus on immersion and experiential experiences. We do live case studies with real businesses. One of the most popular things we do is I have corporations come and the CEO or leader shares a problem that if they had the time, they would solve. But it's just slightly further down the priority list of the key issues today. And they challenge student teams to form and solve their problem. Now, the beauty of that is most of the students who fall into those teams end up getting pretty nice jobs with those companies. We build accelerators. In our city alone, we have 20 different places you can go work on a new idea. 20. And we're not that big a city. So once you are At the university, you can work in any of our settings on campus. Our largest entrepreneurial complex for the university is actually off campus in the heart of downtown. But there are 20 additional places. We have a place just for people building apps, just for people working on healthcare. We have a place where folks just working on fashion are working together. Why? Because there's so much knowledge transfer when you host 6 and 10 and 20 companies together who are working on similar industries. It makes it very easy for your mentors to show up. That's also part of our ecosystem. We work on modeling and growth tools and partner there with our corporations who give us skunkwork projects and training, and we actually teach entrepreneurial mindset inside our companies. It's been a fascinating journey to do this together. My largest customer in entrepreneurial mindset is a global firm called Schneider Electric. I've trained over 150 executives for Schneider in how to return to the entrepreneurial mindset as they run major pieces of this global company because they've forgotten how to be entrepreneurial. They were too busy focused on the quarterly earnings. And then government becomes a very important part of our ecosystem as well. We're working on our city in Nashville. Our goal is to be one of the 25 smart cities, because our belief is over the next 10 to 20 years, there will be 20 to 30 cities emerge that will be a nucleus where very highly educated, entrepreneurial-minded people will want to cluster. And they want to be in smart cities where from their phone and mobile device, all kinds of things can happen, where the city data is available to them in transportation issues, logistics, trash pickup, paying all your bills. Everything you need to do is a fully wired, clean tech experience. And we're partnering with Schneider, working on Nashville to be one of those. Will we succeed? I don't know. It's a work in process. But I will tell you the byproduct, whether we're named a top 20 or not, is irrelevant. The things we're accomplishing for our city day to day, right now, is only happening because we have that goal to be one of those cities. It's why our population will grow by 1 million people over the next 10 years in our city alone. Today, if you visit our city, there are over 70 cranes in the sky building new buildings, new places to live, new tech parks. It's an explosion going on in our city because our city leaders have committed that entrepreneurial mindset to even the way we run our government. All of those things are a part of the ecosystem, and we as a university are a part of that ecosystem. And I never forget that in the work we do at the university. If I were staying inside the Vanderbilt campus, I would completely miss those opportunities. If I were staying only in my campus, I would completely miss all the opportunities that Google has brought to us. I can't do that for the sake of our faculty, our students, my children, and their grandchildren and my grandchildren. I won't do that because it's too important to our futures. Now let's look at the class I'm speaking of. There are 3 of us that are known as the crazy ones on campus. Steve Jobs' definition of the crazy ones, we're definitely them. We're the round pegs you try to put in square boxes and we don't fit very well. Alan Bentley now leads our tech transfer operation. You can see his credentials there. Dave Owens, who is trained at Stanford, is in our engineering school, and I am in our business school. And together, our goal is to do as many disruptive things as we possibly can to get people to work together. We have partnered with a number of organizations in the town, but here are 3 that I just wanted to mention. And what we have done in doing that is put together a way to visit the tech transfer office and identify 20 to 30 pieces of property sitting there that we think something can be done with. And for this particular class, I'm going to show you, we tend to do it around healthcare technologies because we have so many patents in healthcare technologies. We start with a Tech Venture Challenge. I enjoyed your comments because we have a slightly similar type of program, but it's done in a competitive style. What happens is doctoral students, postdocs, even the research faculty, when their item is selected, They're asked, would you like to participate in the Tech Venture Challenge? Allow local students, entrepreneurs, business leaders, investors to see what you have, and let's see if we can turn it into something. Most tend to say yes. But there is a student on campus put in charge of putting that notion together, or the idea together. And even in the Tech Venture Challenge, they're given insight about technology, and then they are ranked in some way how well they did in the challenge, just so they know the work they need to do next. Then they come to a class called Launching a Venture. The little bodies here show the people that show up, and you can see that here we are in this little circle of our own little system into this class. Now what happens in the class is students sign up for the course knowing this is things that are out of the museum we call tech transfer, has the blessings of the faculty, the blessing of the university, a good executive summary has been put together. Investors are somewhat interested in this. Could this be something, or is it just things to return to the museum after we have taken it out on loan? The ideas from the Venture Challenge are presented, and the students in the class are permitted to vote on the top 5 ideas because we want them to be engaged and excited. So there may be 30 ideas brought to class. The top 5 student votes get picked. The students who presented those top 5 then become the CEOs of companies for the purpose of the class. To remain in this class, the rest of the students must be hired by one of the CEOs. If they're not, they must drop the class. Why? Because that's how life works. I am not a subscriber of forcing people onto a team. I do not believe that does anything for anyone. It only frustrates students and frustrates faculty even more. You know? If you don't want to be here, there's the door. You may leave. It's your life. Make of it what you will. So everyone gets hired or must drop the class. Then the first thing that happens in class is they're taught how to frame this concept. In light of all the things that have already been done, is the best application of this a product or service? You say, how? A service with a patent. A technology-enabled service is a very powerful business. In fact, in our country, some of the highest traded stocks are technology-enabled services. The technology alone has a certain valuation. When you wrap a service around a technology, the valuations for the companies tend to double. So in healthcare, we love to build technology-enabled services. The one I will show you tomorrow is indeed a technology-enabled service. Across the top, we focus on target customer interviews, customer validation, what's the distribution plan, how we will build customer intimacy, getting the customer to fall in love with this idea to drive the revenues. At the bottom, we think about how to optimize the process flow. It's amazing to me, and you as engineers will appreciate this. When you ask a business person or a student to put together their business idea, they just kind of, whatever comes to mind, they lay it on the paper and that's the business. You all know there's an optimal way to align the flow chart so that the resources are most carefully conserved. Business plans should be built the same way. They rarely are. Then out of business model creation, we think about the classic research that's been shown of the 7 core business models, and we try to figure out how many ways money can be made from this idea. We call one revenue model a one-trick pony. And you know what happens to the pony when he can't do the trick anymore. The idea is to find multiple revenue sources with the idea. Then we identify and meet with early adopters to really understand why they will love the idea. Why do we choose early adopters? Because they're already dissatisfied with what's on the market. When we grab their hearts, they'll not only fall in love with the product, they become the evangelists to help get this built. We think about the distribution channels. We build out a classic investment model of how does the business work and make margin, who's on the team, who are the early adopters and the size of the market, where's the money coming from and how is it going to be spent, and how will this company build momentum. When we think of model, the final thing before we show this to investors is to understand that this idea has to produce a better margin, cash flow, than what's already in the market, or it deserves to be smashed and returned to the museum. If An outpatient diagnostic center industry is producing a 15% cash flow margin, and your model is 14, don't bring it to market. You have to be what's already in the market to deserve a place in the market. We do a demo day twice a year. We seeded this year 1,000 people, all investors, looking at what was coming out of these opportunities to invest. That's why we have such a significant amount of capital investment. We've had to move our investment meetings to the Symphony Hall in the city just to accommodate all the folks who want to show up. And then we move to incubation, where the business gets refined with key corporate partners. Our job is before the business leaves the incubator, it has 2 to 3 corporate contracts already signed. Those corporations may own a small piece of the equity, but it has revenue, customers, and cash flow before it leaves the incubation phase. Tomorrow I'll show you Envision Heart. Envision Heart started in the engineering school and with a medical researcher who were 2 friends dreaming of what they could do to change how one could determine if someone was having a heart attack. And tomorrow you'll get to see what their dream has become. So I hope you'll join me in the morning for that. Now, a few final lessons learned before I end. What I have determined in my 30-some years in entrepreneurship is that engineers and scientists around the globe would love to move their ideas to the market. There's very few of us do research for the sake of putting it in a box. But it's largely done through entrepreneurial ventures, and that's a bit of a mystery how all that works. And it's really not that mysterious. If you can do research and produce a patent, you can learn this process very easily. It is a process. But providing knowledge and skill, we allow these researchers to either become part or to simply partner with the leaders of tomorrow's ventures and see what they have created come to life. Our key lessons learned about our ecosystem within our university is execution, not the idea, is what's important. Because you will start with an idea and you are 10 degrees off true north, if true north is a wind. Second is businesses and corporations must be engaged. If you do not have businesses as partners, you have pretty PowerPoints and classwork, but you do not have a business. Third is seed and angel capital is absolutely essential. It is the blood inside the organism that causes things to work. And finally, a collaborative ecosystem matters a lot. Through the collaboration, you provide your faculty, students, and those in your community resources they would not otherwise have. See, the difficulty lies not in the creation of the new thing. Most of the time it's letting go of the old one. Thank you.
So I think we have time for just one question, please. Question.
Thank you very much. This is one question. Those ideas in the museum, have you thought of someone adopting them for a year and see what they do with them? This is based on the story of Bill Gates when he was allowed to play with the patented mouse, I think it was Xerox, and they allowed the young engineer to play with it. Of course, Google today is centered around the mouse.
It's a very good point. We have our tech transfer office under Alan's leadership has put things in a few categories. We have this giant collection of things that if you want to check them out for a year and see what you can do with them, have at it. It's good stuff. All right. Good question. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So by that we end our third session, and we'd like to have a break for Asr prayer and a coffee break, and we'll resume at 3:15 for our panel discussion. Thank you so much.